session of TLC. My name is Kelly Olson-Stewart. I'm an associate professor and the lead faculty for the PhD in Ed program here at UAGC, and I will be hosting this session, Culture of Care, What Do Students Want? By joining us today, you are acknowledging that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC related materials. Microphones will be muted for the presentation, but please feel free to use the chat to post questions and comments. We also have live transcription enabled. If you would like to use it, simply click the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. I'm pleased to introduce our panel of presenters today. We have Sherry Ketchum is an associate professor at UAGC. She's worked here for 12 years with 10 of those as full-time faculty. Chelsea Yates has been an adjunct faculty at UAGC for the past 7 years. Daria Lefebvre is an adjunct faculty at UAGC for the past 10 years, and Elaine Pompang, an adjunct faculty for UAGC for 12 years after 2 years with the Ashford University Writing Services. This team has worked together on research projects for the past 5 years and have published 2 peer-reviewed articles and an article in a newsletter. They hope to eventually publish articles based on work from this project and plan on conducting another survey in early 2023. Thank you for choosing this session, and I will turn it over to this very experienced, enthusiastic team. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kelly, for this amazing introduction. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I'm Daria, and I'll get us started. For quite a while now, our team has been interested in understanding what engagement in an online classroom means to our non-traditional students. So what we found was that there are different levels of engagement possible in e-learning. And while research lauds the benefits of student-to-student and student-to-instructor engagement, students don't always take advantage of these various opportunities to make those classroom connections. So for this particular research, we explored what are these various levels of engagement that exist. We asked our students to tell us what type of engagement and interaction they prefer that would best support their academic growth and create a meaningful learning environment for them. And we examined how to align facilitation of online courses with these expectations. So we're going to start with some quick lit review of our foundation, and then we'll look at the data that we collected and analyzed. And then we're going to end with inviting you to join in the conversation as to the interpretation of what it all means to us, online instructors, and how we might use this knowledge to best engage our online learners. So we can go to the next slide. Thanks, Chelsea. So instructional communication researchers have devoted a lot of time to exploring issues of instructor behavior in the classroom. They link it to several learning outcomes, including student cognitive and affective learning, course satisfaction, institutional retention, and persistence. Years and years of that research on instructional communication techniques identified a variety of useful strategies in reaching these learning outcomes. But in much of it really comes down to the importance of instructor and student levels of engagement in the classroom. So overwhelmingly, the term engagement is used to identify that ideal level of communication between instructor and students in online courses. So for UAGC, for us, we conceptualize engagement as a high level of interaction using a variety of learning objects available in online courses that support different levels and depth of communication. So these are things like discussion boards, emails, office hours, online live chats, video and audio feedback. So to understand what our students need to be successful in their courses, we ask them what they want and how they feel about these different levels of engagement in their online classrooms. So I'm going to pass it on to my next presenter, and we're going to look at some of these interesting things that we found in our research.
Hello. So we were able to get students to participate by sharing a survey link on the landing page of the Canvas classroom. And it was voluntary participation. They had to fill out a form, you know, explaining that they understand they're in a project and everything. And we used Qualtrics. It's a pretty easy survey tool to use. Students answered questions on a Likert scale. And then there were 2 open-ended questions at the end, and we will not have time to discuss those yet. In fact, we have not really analyzed that content yet. It's something to do, isn't it, team? So the Likert scale we find was an ideal approach. It's easy and pretty clear to get a picture of what's going on. We used the results we generated were from using a numerical analysis tool in Qualtrics. Some of the limits of the survey is that we had a relatively small sample size. According to the university internal data, we have about 25,000 students, and we had 389 replies, which is about 1.5%. In the survey world, the ideal is usually 3 to 5%. So that's one of the reasons we want to redo the survey in early 2023. And we're going to really try to use a couple of different ways. Instead of just having a landing page, we want to have it as an announcement, and we want to send a general email trying to encourage students to take the survey. The survey wasn't completely representative. It was more white and more female. I know we have about 65-35 female to male ratio, and our survey was more like 75%. It was about 10% more white also. But it was more accurate for representing age and major. So we also have a lot of data that we're not going to cover today, but if people are interested, we have data where we have done correlations between major, race, and what year students are and how they feel. So if anybody's interested in that, you can contact me. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to go over, we asked the students 20 questions, and we're just going to go over, I think it's 7 here, and I'm going to go over just the first few. So the first question was, how important are interactions between instructors and the students? And you can see that they are overwhelmingly interested in this. About 68% said it's very important, and then another 20%, so that's 88% say it's either very important or important. So I think we've convinced them of the value of this student-instructor interaction. Next slide, please. Now we asked about how important it is for students to interact with other students in the classroom. Here we don't see quite as much of a recognition of that value, with 38% saying it's very important and about 24% saying that it's important. So we still have a good majority of the students recognizing that, but it's something to think about in terms of how we design our classes.
Okay. So when we measured satisfaction with discussion forums, we saw the majority of students are happy with current engagement levels, and whatever is happening in the discussion right now, it's meeting or exceeding their expectations. So for those who said very well, it was 27.8%, and well was 23.7%, and together that's 51.4%. When we asked if students would like to have more email conversations with instructors about feedback they received on their work, we found an ambivalence. So 39.5% didn't agree or disagree with email engagement, but we do see that most lean towards email correspondence about feedback. So when we combine agree and strongly agree, it is 43.6%. So for the next question, we asked if students would like to have a live synchronous opportunity in the classroom to talk with their instructors to go over course material. Here we saw most wanted access or engagement with their instructor. And if we combine somewhat agree and strongly agree, it's at 62.1%, which is pretty high. When we asked if students would like to have chat sessions with their peers to talk about course material, there is interest, but it's not as desired as talking with an instructor. If we combine somewhat agree and strongly agree, it's 51.5%. And if we combine strongly disagree and somewhat disagree, it's 26.2%. It's notable here because this is the highest we've seen for strongly disagree and somewhat disagree, those two combined. So within a limited setting, we did inquire about why students wouldn't want engagement with their peers. And we found that students are satisfied with current levels, and that's consistent to the findings. But for those that didn't want more, what they said was that they don't have enough time, which is 28.2%. And then again, within a limited setting, we asked why they would not want more engagement with their instructor. And here we also saw that they're satisfied with current levels, which is consistent. But of those that don't want more engagement, they said that they're independent learners at 8.7%.
All right. So to summarize our information, our survey covered traditional online engagement and non-traditional online engagement. Traditional aspects are discussions and email. And here we found that students are satisfied with the current levels of engagement within the discussions. The majority of those who we surveyed found that the discussions were meeting their expectations for social interactions. With an email engagement, students were actually indifferent. Most didn't have a preference to email assignment feedback engagement, but others are actually really open to the idea. Classroom assessment tools, or CATs, could be used within emails to help find gaps in understanding. Also, emails could review main points of assignments, or students and instructors could work together to create strategies for improvement on those assignments. And then when asked if students would like more opportunities to discuss their course materials with the instructor directly, students also consented and showed a desire for more engagement in this area. This could be accomplished through office hours, phone calls, or even live Q&A sessions. And likewise, there was also an interest in having more access to communicating with peers beyond just the discussion posts. Ways that this could be accomplished would be through chat rooms for one-on-one student interaction, live lounge spaces, assigning group work, having a mentor system, through student-led clubs, or through online events, such as study sessions or virtual games, so that students can build community together. All right, so questions and discussion. Does anyone have any questions for us? Or would anyone like to comment on how your online teaching experiences align with our findings? Feel free to either unmute and speak here live, or you could type in the chat as well.
Can you address how an additional survey, like what additional information are you wanting to collect, or that, oftentimes after we do a survey, we find those gaps and think, oh, I should have asked this, or I should have asked it in this way. What did you find that now you want to change?
Well, I think, like I mentioned this, I think before the meeting actually started, I personally want to get a sense of how students feel about this big effort that we've made to work with them on deadlines, all the culture of stuff, care stuff. So, have they felt the impact? Have things changed? Do they feel their instructors are working with them more? Do they feel like there's flexibility here? And a little bit more, because here's my interpretation of this data. Well, first of all, we don't know for sure what these students' status is. Like, coming in, are these our most ambitious students who are doing very well and highly satisfied with their overall experience? If so, this might not be representative of how most students feel. The people who probably take the survey are the students who probably show up, right? That's what I'm trying to get at. So there might be some bias there. So we might be able to ask some questions about their standing here, how they've been doing in their classes, so that we have a better sense of who this student is, like who are we profiling. Another major question I have tried many times to host office hours, inviting students to come chat with me. And in a lot of these surveys, I see people, students responding saying they'd really be interested in that. And I have not seen that follow-up with students actually showing up to these events that I've tried to organize to get a conversation going and to give them additional support. I also send out weekly emails where I basically am like, if anybody ever wants to talk more, just email me back and we'll set up a time to Zoom, And I've had very poor luck in getting students to actually do that extra step. So there seems to be this interest, and that's why we had those questions at the end about like, what is it that's keeping you from doing these ideals? And those are the types of questions that I want to ask is, what's keeping you from doing this next step of kind of more live interaction and more invested interaction? And then I'm just going to say one other thing, which is we asked them a set of questions about how they use the feedback. And I don't remember the numbers, but what was it? Something like 70 or 80% of them said
was
that,
high. It was like really high.
They say they read their feedback every single time. Yeah. They deeply think about it. They apply
incorporate it.
Yeah. So those were some questions. And in fact, when we did this presentation previously, it took like a lot longer. So we went through the information very, very quickly. If I had known we were going to, go through that so quickly, I would have shared some of that data with you all here today too. But the gist of it is they all say that it was super high, like 80 to 90%. I'm thinking that they said that they read their feedback, they apply it to and I want to ask some questions to get into that a little bit more, because I am not convinced that my students always read my feedback. So those are the types of questions. Sorry, I spoke so long, but yeah, that's the gist of it.
I think that's what I was shocked about also with the survey results, was that it was so positive, because when we were formulating these questions, I almost came in thinking that they're going to be like, I hate discussions. I never want to do them. I don't want any more email. Like I thought like they would just be like, no, I just want to get in and get out, do my work and be done with it. So I was really surprised also. And I think it's that whole, it goes back to, the people that took the survey are those who want to do it because their instructor asked them to, or like they're just self-motivated to get everything that they can out of anything that they do.
Yeah. And speaking to Stephanie's question about the aha discovery, yeah. I think that was part of it. I think that we were all thinking, we don't want, I was thinking that the students would feel like, we don't want to produce any more work for ourselves. So we don't want to like say that we want to have like mandatory weekly meetings, live meetings, because then it might actually happen and we don't want to be on video, because that's in my experience with my students, that's the gist of how I see them.
Not have anyone show up, because it's discouraging to be like, I set aside this time to be there for them, and then no one comes because they don't want to do it or they don't value it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I was just in another panel before this on the the PLC, Professional Learning Community, and it's about like holding meetings with a clear objective in mind. And after going to that meeting, it made me wonder if maybe that's how I should set up, because I did this in a couple different classes where I had just weekly office hours. I would show up for an hour block on Zoom and I would just sit there, or I tried to use the big blue button, one or the other. And in 2 classes of doing that every week, I had 1 student show up. So it, like you said, it's discouraging and you feel like, why am I just sitting here? So maybe if we were to more carefully define goals, instead of it just kind of being like open and come see me, like, if you show up to this, you will accomplish this. Maybe if we had a more clearly defined goal, we could actually get them to follow through on this, because either the students who answered these surveys are our happiest and best students, which frankly might be true, or there's some kind of gap between the way they're seeing themselves and their actual practice.
Or it could be like, oh, yes, I intend to do that. That's the ideal. I would love to do that. But when it comes down to it, I got all this other stuff to do. We're not going to do it.
Right.
I think that's definitely true. And I've found that similar to Sherry, if the times that I have held like online office hours and waited for students to show up, I haven't had any luck. But I've also found that communication really amps up on the days that papers are due. So I've been wondering about, testing out the time that I offer those sessions, different things like that. So I think that's something we could look into more as well. Like, would students want these opportunities to be more like aligned with due dates or different things like that. There's a lot of different avenues that we can explore there.
Yeah, and I've never tried, I've talked to other instructors who send out, I don't remember the tool that they use, but there's some tool you can use to share schedules and have students like share when their best time frames are. And then I would actually choose the office hours based on the majority availability. So maybe that's something to pursue to better find and meet with them. I'm curious, since we have a group of 23 people here, what kinds of questions can you think of that you would like to ask students? I don't know if this is the general sentiment of this group, but I feel like I am constantly giving feedback that is mostly not read, and it is demoralizing to me to spend so much of my valuable time giving them notes, detailed notes of their work, and feeling like there's no, one of the things that we talk about is the concept of engagement is deeper than interaction, and engagement is actually back and forth. There's a feedback loop, right? And what I feel we don't do very well in this university, or at least in my experience, we don't have enough of that loop. And I have wished, but I didn't feel like it was within the confines of Canvas, to have some kind of like requirement at the end of them receiving their waypoint feedback on their papers, that like have a check mark that says that they read the feedback, or a check mark and then something like, please answer or make one comment based on this feedback, so that I just have a little bit of that loop. I'd be curious. Oh, Amy, good. Okay, maybe I need to start doing that.
Yeah, I think there's a limitation in the system that we use, because I know in some cases there are, in some learning management systems, there are ways to see that the student has in fact viewed our feedback. So you can tell if the student actually opened the feedback that we left, or if it was never reviewed. That's one of the things that I think our system is lacking. I feel like we used to have an option, or that there used to be something in the past, but I haven't been able to find it this time around. I feel like or maybe I'm just dreaming. We've been through so many systems, we've gone through this a big change and such. So, but that's one of the challenges that we as a team, when we talk about these types of things, I saw somebody else mentioned about audio feedback.
Yes.
That they're doing audio feedback. We've actually this is our second study. The first study we did was on video feedback, because we teach communication classes. And so we did a study on video feedback, and we compared classes where students received video feedback on their assignments versus students when it was just written feedback. And there was, if you're interested in that, we can certainly share that article with you that we've published, that we have specifically looked at that particular aspect. But what we find constantly is that all the efforts that we are putting out appear to be going in the wrong direction, which is why we are so interested in figuring out what is it that the students want, and what is it from their perspective that would help them engage better and perform better, because we have all these great tools and all these resources at our disposal that we can help them with, or that we can use to help them. And yet somehow there's still some kind of a barrier or something that is, things get lost and we can't reach them. So, and somebody had mentioned, I really liked, Sherry, I don't know if you saw that, somebody a little bit earlier said, would you use this? Kimberly mentioned, would you make use of this option? Mm-hmm. I think I really like that question, because it doesn't necessarily, the challenge is putting students on the spot, even though the surveys are anonymous. I still feel like when you take a survey, you kind of are put on the spot and you feel like you got to present yourself, even though nobody really knows who you are. So I kind of like that framing that question in a way of, would you use it if it was available? So I think, Sherry, we should make note of that and maybe consider asking questions in that way, so that it's a little bit more indirect, and it gives them an option to say, yes, I would, or no, I wouldn't. And then we can, go from there.
Yeah,
it looks like Ramona had a comment here about when we select the student in the gradebook and then click access report, we can view where the students have been, but it might not show all the sections. So that'll be something interesting that we can check on. I'm sorry, Sherry.
So if you, no, I'm curious okay, so you go to the gradebook access report. Okay. So in relation
like, I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, that's
okay, but there's also a tool on the landing page in Canvas that says analytics. And I don't know if everyone's aware of this. Somebody told me about it, but it allows you to look to see how many times your announcements have been clicked.
Ooh, really?
And it is completely demoralizing.
Because I wish they just had that on the announcement so I could see.
Because in my announcements, in doing my peer reviews of instructors, I saw that some instructors were posting at the beginning of the announcement, please post a reply below so that I can see that you read this. Okay. So that's like one way to check in on who's showing up, right? But the analytics show you just the click. So it could be that one student went there 5 times, who knows? But I did notice that, in the first like 2 weeks of class, I had a pretty good number, maybe just assuming that each one of the clicks was one student, like maybe half the students showed up to read the announcements. Still not ideal and still not reflecting what the student said about, that's another question to ask is, I think we did, how often do you read the announcements?
right.
Yeah.
And they all said, we read them all the time.
Yeah, not on this session. We didn't talk about it here.
I feel like we need to check their information for accuracy, which sounds horrible, I know. But
I really think it was the sample that we got.
So. And to somebody's point about leaving videos, first of all, Stephanie, you're right. It's very time consuming. You really need to do it in you got to keep it down to like 3 minutes, or it becomes very time consuming just to wait for the video to render.
Right.
But and we, in that paper that we wrote 2 papers, one from looking at the instructor perspective. So we had instructors actually count how long it took to give feedback by video versus in writing. So there's a whole paper on the instructor experience, and then there's another paper on the student experience. So, and the student experience is more like their performance. So we have 2 papers that we were able to write based on the data that we collected from the last study we did. But Stephanie, what ended up happening, and I know another instructor here said that you started leaving video feedback. I use Screencast-O-Matic, which actually gives you a view count of your videos. So I was able to go and see what percent of students who actually clicked on the video link that I sent them. And it ended up only being like 17% of the students watched my videos. I made personalized videos for each of them, based on their work. And it's hard to get buy-in, or even from me, to tell the university they should do that when I see such poor numbers. So it's hard for me to get on board with the let's all leave them videos. And then, like I said, there's also the issue of it just being much more time consuming for instructors.
And it looks like folks who are commenting in the chat are having the same experiences as well. And I'm also seeing some of the enthusiasm for the new analytics. So that is definitely a good resource to know about.
Yeah, I'd also like, it'd be curious for us to see, one of the things that we did in the study that we did looking at student performance, we found that there was no significant increase in performance based on whether or not they got a video feedback or written feedback. And that's not surprising if it is true that many of the students don't end up clicking on those links that we send them. So the next survey is definitely going to dig into the whys. And, because my question is it about time, or is it about them being convinced of the value? Because if it's about time, that's a different issue. Then we have some control over the convincing part, but we don't have control over the time. So we need to figure out a way to convince them of the value of our feedback so that they'll actually spend time with it. That's That's my sense.
Thank you. Thank you to Chelsea and Sherry and Daria and Elaine. Thank you to the audience for participating today. We encourage you to attend tomorrow's keynote session at 9 o'clock Pacific time with Dr. Adriana Kazar. And thank you so much for attending TLC.